Most of us think burnout is the enemy, but what if the deeper threat is actually forgetting who we are? In this episode, I sat down with Dr. Diana Hill, a clinical psychologist, best-selling author, and one of the most emotionally intelligent thinkers I've ever met, to unpack something I think every gym owner, coach, and high performer needs to hear. You can lose yourself chasing the thing that you once loved. We talk burnout, its ugly cousin bore-out, but it's deeper than that. We talk about the silent identity crisis that happens when your passion becomes a business and your purpose gets buried between your payroll, KPIs, and putting out fires. We explore how to reconnect with the values that started your journey, how to spot emotional resistance in your clients and in yourself, and how self-compassion and discomfort are not opposites. They're both required if you want to grow. We even dive into the psychology of motivation, raising kids in a noisy world, and how to lead without forcing outcomes. This isn't just a business episode, it's a reset, a mirror. If you've been stuck in autopilot, if the drive that once lit you up is starting to flicker, this episode, it'll pull you back to center. Let's get into it. All right, Dr. Hill, thank you so much for joining us. And I've got a lot off air here. We were talking, and you know that I have a lot of questions for you. So some of this is a little selfish and self-serving, but I also know that by these same questions that we kind of get into, it's probably going to help a lot of other people because I think a lot of people are thinking about this stuff. But thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for having me here. Yeah, it's like sitting next to someone on an airplane and they find out you're a psychologist and you get their whole life story and every single question under the sun. And probably for personal trainers, same deal. They find out that you're a gym owner or personal trainer and all of a sudden you're giving them advice for 5 hours. So I'm excited to see where this takes us.
Yes. And the first thing that I want to talk about really is just the burnout of business owners in general. I mean, a lot of the people that are listening, they are in the fitness space. So they have health clubs or yoga studios, or they have multiple locations, and they can get burnt out pretty easily. And this is just my like quick thought on this, only because I've been in the space myself, is that you get into this work of passion and you go, I'm going to go do this thing because I love doing it. I'm super passionate about it. And it's kind of like a hobby for you initially, but you just love it so much. You want to help others. And you're kind of that nurturing sense of a person, and you want to help others do other things that make them healthier and feel good. And then that turns and evolves into a business. And then you realize that you're setting yourself up into a position where you're wearing all the hats and you're doing all these other things. And you kind of get away from actually doing what you started with, which was to help other people. Now it's, well, we got to drive revenue numbers and we got to get more people in the door and like the next person, and you're just running ads, and now you're kind of like all over the board. So do you think burnout comes from working too much? Or is it coming like working in the wrong direction, or what's actually happening psychologically in this whole process?
Yeah, well, burnout it's an ICD. It's a classification of a syndrome now. And the symptoms of it are feelings of sort of you feel or you think that your performance is declining. You have extreme physical exhaustion. And then you get this like a detachment. Like you start to you're just not in it anymore. You don't have that same love or drive for what you used to have that love and drive for. And when they look at the research behind burnout, what causes it, there's a very clinical description behind that. It's like you've lost contact with your values. Maybe you're in a toxic environment. Maybe your workload is not mapping on to your resources available. But what you're describing to me is actually something that is a little bit related to burnout, but may not be full burnout. Burnout can be just like, you can get burned out on things that you love all the time, but you're talking about sort of this essence of why you got into this in the first place. You had a genius about you, something that you are good at, you're talented in, something that came easily to you, something that you had this like intrinsic interest in. And you started to build something, and it brought a lot of vitality. But over time, you can lose contact with that. You can also lose contact with the values, the reasons why you started doing this in the first place. And now you're just in like manager mode where you're dealing with all of the people and it feels like this massive stressor to do. And you've lost contact with that vital life force that started this thing off. There's actually a related term to burnout, which I've gotten interested in, which is bore out, which is basically you don't feel stimulated anymore. You don't feel like you're using your gifts and talents. You're just like kind of like underutilized, even though you may be overutilized at the same time. It's both and. And my whole work around wise effort is helping people reconnect with that genius energy and sometimes get it aligned again through psychological flexibility and other practices to their values. Sometimes that's editing a whole lot, streamlining. Sometimes it's getting clear on your values. Sometimes it's doing something entirely different and being willing and flexible enough to make the big change that you've been avoiding making because it's going to be uncomfortable.
So when you're talking about this, like I'm reliving my past, and I'm going, I remember days when I was in the gym and, we had a lot of locations to handle, and I would be back and forth from one gym location to the next, dealing with everything that you just mentioned. And I'm passionate about fitness. I mean, I remember ripping all the stuff out of my parents' garage and turning my parents' garage into my fitness center when I was, 14 years old. And fitness was my thing. I mean, reading the magazines and exercising, and, that was my thing. I wanted to do it. I got to a point in my business where I didn't even want to, at the end of the day, I didn't even want to look at a weight plate. I didn't even want to look at another gym or think about another gym or going anywhere to exercise because it became so overwhelming. It was like, I don't even care about doing that. My health can come later. I was in this place all day long. I want to leave. Yeah. Explain to me kind of like, is that more like a bore out or is that a burnout? Like what was that? And then what's the difference between the two? So someone who's in this position who may be experiencing something similar, they're going, well, I need to correct this through your process, right? It's through the same teachings that you give for high performers. But then the other component of that, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but the other component of that, as you're giving kind of like this solution, is a lot of times people go, well, I don't have time. Like all my time is spent on my business. I don't have time to go work on myself to reconnect with those things.
Mm-hmm. There's so many threads I want to pull on there. I'll start with the most recent one. I don't have time. That's a thought, a belief. And I'm sure as a fitness instructor, gym owner, that's actually one of the excuses you hear all the time for why people don't exercise. And you're like, yeah, you don't have time, but somehow I have time and I don't have time either, right? So that belief around time is sometimes more a prioritization issue than it is actually a real time issue. None of us have time, yet we all have the same amount of time. And some of us are, meal prepping and getting to the gym, and some of us are journaling and practicing self-compassion and meditating and figuring out what are my values here, and really, do I have the foundation clear around what I want, why I want it, and how I need to edit my life to support that? Because what we live in a society that's just an add-on. We just keep on adding on, without actually really looking at the why behind what we're adding. We think that bigger is better. We scale, as opposed to looking at quality, looking at regenerative energy. How is this feeding to me? Is it still aligned with my values? Am I still showing up in alignment with my values? So when you get to the point at your job where, I'm sure you probably couldn't watch The Biggest Loser on TV either. Just like I can't watch any couples therapy show. I'm like, people are always recommending to me these couples. Like, I'm like, no, the last thing I want to do at the end of the day is watch any, Netflix on couples therapy. But when you've lost that essence, that thing that you used to love, it's actually a very important time to pause. And the difference between burnout and bore out, burnout is just you've burned yourself to the bone of just doing too much. And you usually there's sort of some kind of toxicity to the context in which you are in. So we do get burned out by toxic relationships in the workplace. Maybe there's some, relationships you need to work on. Bore out has more to do with understimulation of the things that need to be stimulated, which may be creativity. It may be play. You may need a lot more play. You may need a lot more creativity. I imagine starting a podcast like this was a little bit of a spark that could ignite interest back into your work again. Mm-hmm. And what I do with both is sort of this similar process of starting. The most important place to start is to get curious, and not get curious from a fix it perspective, but get curious from a true, I am curious what is happening for me here. And when we're engaging in unwise effort, when we're using our energy in unwise ways, there's usually 3 things that are going on. The first thing, and this will apply to parenting, your gym life, your relationship with your partner, or your own, or looking at your own clients and how and why they're not going to the gym, right? So the first thing that engages us in unwise effort is that we are stuck in some kind of self-limiting story. And the self-limiting story may have been like, I have to do it this way, or I can't actually have what I want, or we have self-limiting stories. We have dreams and ways in which we wish things were different, but we hold back because I'm not the type of person who, I don't have enough time to. That's a self-limiting story, right? Mm. So that's the first thing, is we're stuck in a story. And our mind is constantly creating stories, and we just believe our minds to be true. It's a story that was told to us at some point, and we just believe that, or a story of our culture and our society. The second thing that leads to unwise effort that we have to check ourselves on is, am I avoiding discomfort? Because usually when we're in bore out or burnout, there's some kind of change that needs to happen. And we are unwilling to walk through the fire of that change. Like we're unwilling to feel the discomfort of taking a risk, or being in uncertainty, or starting a podcast, or starting a Substack, or starting whatever it is, that could be a creative force that goes back to some of those values. And then the third thing that keeps us in unwise effort is we're holding too tight to things staying the same. We get into our comfort zone. We get into our routine. You've seen this with your clients. They've done, 45 minutes on the treadmill for 45 years. And you're like, would you want to jump on a box? And they're like, no, this is what I do. I do 45 minutes of treadmill. And you're like, there's so much more out there, right? But as long as we're holding on to things staying the same, then we don't grow. And the evolution and growth happens through change. It's the only way it happens. So we have to open up to change. We have to let go of our story. We have to get comfortable with discomfort, and we have to open up to change. It's the same 3 things that you'll teach your clients. It's the same 3 things that you'll teach your teenager. It's the same 3 things that you need to teach yourself if you're feeling stuck and dissatisfied at work.
Would you say avoiding discomfort and holding tight to stay the same, would you feel like those, for the unwise effort, you listed those 3 things, are those similar? Because I see avoiding discomfort would be me trying to stay with the familiar. And I also see almost holding tight to stay the same would be almost the same thing, right?
Like, there's something similar about it. The distinction that we make in psychology, or if you want to get really nitpicky about it, there's a lot of overlap. But the 2 terms that we talk about are experiential avoidance and experiential attachment. So experiential avoidance is I'm avoiding discomfort. Experiential attachment is maybe I'm attached to a certain identity. I am the CEO of my business. I am a successful blah, blah, blah. And so the attachment, keeping things the same, may be attached to, holding to some kind of identity of who you are that you're unwilling to let go. And it will be uncomfortable. But the experiential avoidance is like, I don't want, it's like I feel anxiety, or it feels really sad to maybe change or leave something that has been, around so long, or I'm really embarrassed around making a change. So they're just slightly different, but they're similar processes, and the way through them psychologically is we work with one, like building up our capacity to be with all the uncomfortable stuff that's inside of us, as we get clear on where we want to go based on our values. So even going back to, I'm curious for you, Michael, like you said, you were doing this in your garage as a kid. So you have the natural gifts and talents around it, but there was also probably something around your values of wanting to get others involved in it. Mm-hmm. And, that like sharing the love of fitness, it's about more than fitness. I mean, I know that we all know that, like when we move our bodies and we feel strong, our relationships are better, our work is better, our mood is better. So what for you were the original sort of reasons why you built out all of these?
Yeah. I talk about this sometimes in some of the shows that I've done, or even in coaching seminars when I'm working with other gym owners, because I try and find their root cause, their root reason.
Yeah.
What moved them? For me, it was at a young age. It was the first time I've dealt with grief or death. My grandfather had passed away. I was really close to him, and I wanted to be initially a veterinarian. Then I wanted to be a physician, and I wanted to go into cardiology. And as I went through school, I took a course in college. It was a cardiovascular course, and I just found it in a book. It was just like one of those like spur of the moment things, like doesn't happen to everyone. I remember sitting on my bed in a book from school, because at the time back then, you couldn't go online. So the book fell on the floor and it opened up to cardiovascular. It was like a 301 course in school, and it was in the Phy Ed department. And I was really curious about it. So I went and took the class, and the professor said something that changed my course of direction in school. And it was that those who were sitting in the room today, he said, that you are the ones who are preventing. Doctors prescribe when a disease happens, but you are the ones who prevent disease from happening. So that moved me. I was like, wow, yeah, that's so true. So if I can get into this side of the world before it even goes where someone would ever have to even sit in front of a doctor, they don't need to take the medication. And that was the movement for me. Yeah. As you were talking though, you had said something.
I have to pause you on that, because that was so beautiful. And I imagine every person listening has a story like that.
I think so.
When you're running around from gym to gym to gym, you lost it. I mean, I have my own story that's a similar story of how I became a therapist, right? My own like really deep heartfelt moment when I felt like what I'm struggling with is so intense. I don't want other people to struggle with this, right? Yeah. And that I could be an agent of change. But when you're up on the surface and you're just running from one thing to the next and you're piling on more and more, you lose contact with that. So sometimes we have to dial way back to find contact with that and see that can be manifested in many ways. I mean, our careers, what is it? Esther Perel says that we have many marriages within a marriage. Mm-hmm. We have many careers within our careers, and we have to be open to how our career is going to change and evolve. And that for me has been like, a therapist in one-on-one with people, on a stage, sharing, with hundreds of people, dialing back to little community events, doing, all these different ways, writing books, but all these different ways where it's kind of twisted and turning. But the through line is that value. And if you can contact the through line, then you'll be more flexible and be able to make the changes that you need to make. Yeah.
So anytime I've ever gotten to a point of that level of discomfort, or attachment, like this idea that this is the person that I am, I've been in a position where I would go, and maybe this is the wrong thing to do, I don't know, but I would think to myself, well, if nobody existed in this world, if I was the only human being on this planet, would it matter what I said, or would it matter what I did? So why don't I just do it? That's one way that I kind of overcome that. The other way that I overcome it, to your point about like me starting the podcast, like there was I had nerves for sure. Like the first few episodes that I did, probably first 20 or 30 episodes. And when I was going through that process, even for the show or even getting up on stage and speaking, a lot of times I think to myself, especially in front of an audience, is every single one of these people in here were in diapers at one point. Mm-hmm. So just look at them like they're in diapers, like they're just little babies in diapers. So, you know, when you think of it like that, for me anyway, it just kind of eases the tension or pressure.
Those are great ways. And you're actually alluding to two psychological processes and doing both of those. So as a psychologist, we're always looking at like, what is the psychological process that will free this person up? Mm-hmm. Just like as a, physical trainer, you know so much more about I was trying to do pull-ups this morning with like with the rubber band around my knee at my gym. You know about all the muscles that are going on and all the connective tissues that are going on in my pull-up. Well, I know about that behind the scenes of all the things that you're doing in that. So in those two things, when you are thinking about somebody in diapers, what you're doing is actually one of the core components of self-compassion, which is seeing our common humanity, and actually a core component of compassion. That just like me, this person's a human and is vulnerable and was a child once. This is actually a Buddhist practice that just like me practice. Just like me, this person struggles with things in their life. Just like me, this person has things that keeps them up at night, and that we're just humans, right? So that helps get us out of our selfing, out of our like, I'm the type of person who blah, 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 or I'm better than or worse than, that we just bounce back and forth in our roller coaster of ego. So that's a compassion practice when you do that. And then the other process that you were engaging in, another psychological process, when you said like, if I were alone and nowhere else were here, or I'm on an island and I were to make the decision of what I want to do with my life, is a process called perspective taking. And anytime we're all tangled up in something, we're looking at it too close, sort of like, you're looking at a phone and you don't see the whole living room, so, or you're looking at a work problem and you don't see the whole context. You want to zoom out. And when you did that practice of saying, if I were alone, what would I want? You were zooming out to a bigger you, right? A you that's not all tangled up in what people think, or all tangled up in what your to-dos are, or the tasks that you think are so important. I work with people that come into my office that are often in crisis, and all the things that they thought were important 2 weeks ago, when they are in crisis, whether it's a health crisis or a parent that's dying or a child that's in trouble, none of that matters. They get clear pretty quick. So it's a zoom out practice, a perspective taking. And both of those processes, compassion and perspective taking, are really core processes that can help you when you're in bore out or burnout or any kind of struggle you're in, to get out of those three things. Get out of your story, get out of holding too tight to things, and get out of running from discomfort.
That's great. I was glad that to hear that there's actually something behind what I was doing.
Yes.
Without knowing that's what I was doing.
Yeah, I always feel that way when they tell me things like that at the gym. Like there's something behind what you're doing, this exercise that you're doing. There's actually a reason why you're doing it. I'm like, why am I doing fire hydrants? I don't, what's ridiculous. This is an embarrassing move.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit, because I think that whole burnout and bore out, that's common for a lot of business owners, where they kind of lose perspective of what they were purposeful in when they started, is understanding the clients. And, initially I had said that about clients who come into the gym and they don't necessarily feel comfortable, right? They don't feel like they can wear the Lululemon stuff because someone else there is wearing it. And so the spotlight's on them.
Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier. So how can business owners or fitness owners how can they be aware of that? How can they recognize that and go, I can help this person by doing XYZ things, or how can they, I guess, see it before it becomes a problem so that person doesn't leave?
Yeah. So one of the biggest barriers to moving our bodies is not our bodies at all. It is our minds. And I recently partnered with Katie Bowman, who is from Nutritious Movement. I just love her work. People probably have heard of her, to write this work. She contacted me saying, I want to look at psychological barriers to moving our body. And we wrote this book called I Know I Should Exercise, but 44 Reasons Why We Don't Move and How to Get Over Them. And what we did is we reached out to people in both our audiences and said, why, like, give us all the reasons why you don't move, and
They were
we
happy
got these,
to, right?
oh, they were happy to, but they're very specific. They're like, I have 5 kids and there's no sidewalks and my cat crawls on me when I'm trying to do my exercise. I mean, they're like what you hear. They're like the real reasons that you hear. And then we categorize them into these 7 categories. And they categorized into things like, I'm not motivated. It's uncomfortable. I'm embarrassed. I don't have enough time. Mm-hmm. Other people won't move with me. I come home and my husband's on the couch. What am I supposed to do? Like, my environment makes it impossible to move. And then she threw all these reasons at me, real life reasons. And I answered them all from a psychological perspective. And then she answered them all from a movement biomechanist perspective. It's a super fun read. And it's like a training manual for gym owners, physical therapists, physical trainers, as much as it is for the clients, right? Because what happens when someone gives us the reason why they can't move is we fall into really predictable traps. We tell them the first most predictable trap is we tell them all the reasons why it's good for them to exercise. Doctors do the same thing.
So what do you do instead?
I'm going to tell, well, hold on. If your client didn't know all the reasons why, like they already know all the reasons why it's good to exercise, and still only 25% of the population is meeting our guidelines for exercise. We know the reasons why. Telling someone the reasons why to do something does not increase their chances of doing it. Hands down. So the first thing that you actually need to do is you need to look at a bigger, broader contextual map of what's going on for this person. Is it because they're stuck in a story? Is it because they're avoiding some kind of discomfort? Is there some kind of either emotional discomfort going on there? We all have, go back to stuck in stories. We all have the story around I'm fat or I can't run or the story from gym class. I still remember in my science class, my science teacher writing all the weights on the board in our science class. And we were doing some kind of science experiment around weight. And I'm like, there's my weight. And it was like kind of it was like, I was like the higher end. I was like one of those kids that developed by the time I was 13, I looked 16, right? So of course my weight was higher up.
They're like pointing you out. Yeah.
But I felt so much shame. And you carry that forward. You carry the story forward. Or is the person holding too tight to things staying the same, or attached to some, like the athlete that they used to be, but now their body has changed, or they're going through perimenopause and they don't have the energy that they had, all the things, right? So you have to actually look at a bigger picture of what's going on rather than just telling someone the reasons why they should exercise. Because if you tell them the reasons why they should exercise, they will look at you like, you are not hearing me.
Yeah.
You actually didn't hear the complexity of my situation.
How do you, most of the coaches, and I mean, having you on staff would be amazing, right? Yeah. Everyone would want you at their gym. But how do they navigate that conversation without kind of like crossing the boundary?
Right. So no, you're not going to like tell me about your childhood trauma. Please don't do that. You're not a therapist. Okay. But you're just going to hear more like, tell me all the reasons why. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear the thoughts that go through your head when you wake up in the morning and you don't want to go. I want to hear the feelings that show up for you, like discomfort. I want to know the context of your life of why it makes it so hard or you don't have enough time. We start always, and this is the cornerstone of motivational interviewing, which is used in coaching. It's used in exercise adherence, motivational interviewing. We start with validation and hearing the person, but it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. So the first mistake we make is that. The second mistake we make is not spending the time that we need to spend on why movement matters to them.
Now, why are they here today?
Personally. So if 6 months from now, you were, engaging more in your regular exercise program or whatever, what do you think in your life would change? Not just your body. What in your life would change? How do you think it would impact your relationships? How do you think it would impact your parenting? How do you think it would impact your work? How do you think, would you be able to, or do you care about being a role model? Do you care about being more engaged in other activities in your life that you can't engage in right now because you aren't strong enough. Like maybe you want to take a salsa dance, but you don't have the cardiovascular strength to do salsa, right? But really the deeper reasons why someone wants to move, and those are going to be unique to every human. The reasons why I move personally, like why was I at an exercise class at 5:30 in the morning, or why did I bring yoga into my retreats with therapists? The reasons why I move is actually for to be able to show up for my clients in a more present, engaged, centered way. Mm-hmm. When I don't move, I'm scattered. I lean towards anxiety and I get irritable and I'm not focused. And I really care about my work. I also really care about my kids. So if I go to a 5:30 exercise class and I'm back by 6:30, you're going to get a different mom that's there making eggs than if I don't. And so if you knew that about me as my trainer, and you knew, okay, this woman cares about her work, her clinical work is really important to her, and her kids are really important to her, then now you have a deeper root to draw upon when you wake up in the morning and your mind says, I don't want to, which my mind says every day. I don't want to. It's cold. Not today, or I don't have enough time. But if I remember, oh, this is for my kids, I'll do all sorts of things for my kids. I'll wake up at, 2 a.m. for these kids. I'll also wake up at 5 a.m. for these kids because I know that I'm moving my body to be more present for them. So that's the second piece, is to get really clear on your client's movement why. And in the I Know I Should Exercise But book, we have all sorts of values work in there. In my Wise Effort book, I have a whole chapter on clarifying your values, because it's your values that will help you guide where you direct your energy and your effort. And you want that for your clients, that they draw upon their values to direct their energy and effort at the gym. Because sometimes it's boring. Sometimes exercise is uncomfortable. Sometimes it is boring. Sometimes it is monotonous. Sometimes you have to do stuff that is just sort of like blah. I mean, it's great if we can bring in more enjoyment and more, joy to our movement, make it social, make it fun, make it engaging, making it, unique to your genius. But there's also just some stuff that we do that we're like, this is hard.
So asking those questions is almost like getting your client or the person that you're talking to, getting them to vocalize and hear their reasons, almost getting them to dive in and identify the root problems. So they go, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm saying all these things, I probably should actually start exercising.
Yeah. And I would remove the word should anywhere from any of that. But I would say, if I identify these reasons why I care about moving my body that are so much bigger than just my body, mm-hmm. then those will be my motivator. That's what I want you to then put that value, if you can boil it down to a sentence or a word, put that value on a Post-it note, put that value on your phone, whatever it is. You can have it pop up as a reminder. Remember, Diana, that when you walk midday, you're more present for your clients.
So we used to do these, I would have clients, as one of the things that I taught for our coaches, that they'd have the clients write down a SMART goal and, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. But there was research that I had read years ago that in maybe I read the wrong research, but I'm sure it still holds true, that if you have that you've made a commitment to yourself, and those are the things that you want to do after maybe having this whole conversation with them, and then they are now making that commitment, but there's an 80% greater likelihood that they'll actually attain whatever it is that they're looking to achieve. Yeah.
Well, so SMART goals, there's some research from Steve Hayes at the University of Reno, Nevada. And he looked at SMART goals with college students. And what he found was that college students who set SMART goals at the beginning of the semester, it had no impact on their GPA by the end of the semester.
Really?
College students who set SMART goals, but also did a values writing exercise, had significant impact on their GPA by the end of the semester.
Can you give
college students that didn't start any SMART goals at all didn't do as well as those that had the SMART goals. So the values enhance the SMART goals, because we can have the specific reason, the specific thing that we want to do, make it measurable, make sure that you're tracking it. These are all really important things. Making sure it's, timely. All those things are important. But without the deeper reason, the SMART goal will fall flat, 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in. I'm sorry, without the values driving it. The values are sort of like the deeper nourishment to support those behavioral changes. And there's a lot of science of behaviorism, habit change, and all of that is incredibly beneficial. But sometimes we go there too fast. We go straight to the behavior change without getting to the deeper why.
So that value needs to be, to your point, like on their phone or somewhere where they're seeing it.
Or in their heart.
Yeah.
Or in their intention setting.
Yeah.
Or when they wake up in the morning and they, put a picture by their bedside table of their kids and they look at it and remember, that's why I'm getting up. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have it be so like you could ask your client, what helps you contact that value?
Yeah.
You just talked about your grandpa. He came quick. You talked about this professor who, it came quick. Probably what helps you contact that value is just that memory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so down for sure.
Yeah. And then have it written down. So values work. And then, I think there's also the nitty gritty stuff of having clients, utilize what they're learning in the gym around acceptance of discomfort. We learn with our body. You can hold a plank. It's a great exercise. You can hold a plank and you can do different things with your mind while you hold the plank. So you could hold a plank, and while you're holding your plank, you could say the whole time, have your client do this. Say the whole time, I hate this. This sucks. I don't want to do this. When is this over? Oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. Have them say that to themselves while they hold the plank. Have them then hold the plank again. Maybe next time you could time them. It wouldn't be a good experiment if you're holding the plank. You'd have to do an AB design here, but have them hold the plank again. And this time, what you could say is, what I want you to do is completely just allow the sensations of this plank to be in your body. Pay attention to the sensations without adding a story to it. Notice where you feel them. Notice how they change. Breathe into and be present with the plank. You're doing an acceptance practice. And when they've done this with things like cold water tests, where you put your hands in the cold water, you can stay in it much longer. And then we take that skill. Okay, so you just did it with a plank. Now, what could you do that while you're driving to the gym in the morning? I don't want to, I hate this, blah, 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 right? Or could you practice just acceptance? This is what is, if we can open up with our minds, we can open up, with our hearts, with our behaviors to just accepting what is, we can actually tolerate being in something a lot longer. And it will help them physically, but also emotionally.
So I'm just curious, going through the process of maybe saying, I almost thought you were going to say, then have them hold the plank and have them tell themselves that they love this, do the complete opposite, and that they're enjoying this.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, well, boy, that actually could backfire on you, right? Because they don't necessarily actually like it and they're telling themselves a lie. So
exactly.
Is that kind of the mindset behind it? Is that you want them to? Okay.
That's toxic positivity. That's when, are you married? A relationship? Okay. That's when, into a woman?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Your wife or your teenage daughter comes in and says, do I look fat in this? Or do you like my, do I look good?
Just so you know, I can never get the answer right.
You can't. I know. I'm going to tell you how you can in this moment. I'm going to give you the what you should say. If you tell them, oh, you look great. You're fabulous. You're gorgeous. What are they doing mentally in their mind?
They find to me.
Yeah. Well, they're saying all the reasons why they don't. Yeah. Right. So if you're telling yourself, I love this, but inside you're not feeling that I love this, then you're just going to be in this inner battle, and that'll actually use up a lot of your resources too. If you tell them you do look fat, you do look terrible, right? You'll just that doesn't help, right?
I'll confirm what they think. Yeah.
You'll confirm what they think. Or maybe you should change that outfit. Don't say that either. Well, sometimes you might give some with love, give some feedback around something.
It doesn't match what I'm wearing today. I thought you wanted to match me.
Yeah. The third option is to be present with them. And if it's a wife or a teenager, you may say something like, sounds like you really care about what you're about to go to and you want to get the right outfit. Tell me about what you care about.
Boy, you're good.
Oh, I'm going to this thing with all these women and they all have blah, 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 blah. And they're 10 years younger than me or, whatever. And I'm so self-critical about myself right now. And then you're like, oh, so you really care about being with this group of women, or you really care about this event you're going to, and just, you want to feel good there. Of course you want to feel good there. Of course you care about that. That's points good. To you. So it's the same thing in the plank, is we're just present with what is, as opposed to trying to adding on the negative story that makes us feel depleted, or adding on the toxic positive story, which makes us feel like we're being fake. Just stay with what is, be in acceptance of what is. And when you can do that, then you are much more present in your life. You're much more present in your relationships, and you'll also have a better workout. I mean, for me, the practice of yoga is what freed me from a lot of compulsive exercise, because I learned how to do that, how to be embodied with just what is in my body, and to get really curious about what's here without it needing to change or be different, but just what's here. I'm noticing this. I'm noticing that.
Yeah. Just be aware and be in the moment. So I want to jump to something else, because I know that, again, we're limited on time here. I have some kids that are close to me in my family, and not my direct family, but they have a very rigid eating pattern, and they tend to gravitate towards just chicken nuggets, and very specific on the chicken nuggets, the type and how it's battered and how it's made. And then some fruits, essentially no veggies. They won't eat anything outside of that, especially when it comes to dinner. And they'll have maybe some cereals and some donuts. The parents are always constantly trying to introduce new foods, like, why don't you try this? And it doesn't work. And I'm asking you because you had mentioned, I know that your background in work is with eating disorders. And I want to know, for those listening, how do you navigate that for children who are constantly refusing? How do you get them to work through this? Because, just try this that has not been working.
Yeah. Well, it's always difficult when somebody gives me it's just like the airplane, and they tell me about their mother-in-law that's drinking too much. I'm like, whoa,
look that out. Yeah. Here you go.
Well, no, because the child's not in front of me. The mother-in-law's not in front of me. Right. So there's so many assessment questions that I would have going on there, because there's a lot of things around food and eating that are psychological. There's also biological stuff. Sometimes you can get to an underlying biological thing, like this kid has celiac, and that's what's causing their refusal of certain foods. They're making them nauseous, right? I have a kid that won't eat dairy because he's intolerant to dairy. It's not because he's avoiding cheese. But certainly when we look at early childhood and some of the stuff that develops in early childhood around food and eating, it's, many complex interacting things that are coming together. So one may be that the child is using food as a form of control, right? A way to control things that maybe they don't feel control in the outside world. And this is a way to I worked an intensive outpatient program for eating disorders and worked a lot with anorexia. I had my own history of anorexia. And I remember in my own history of me not eating was a big FU, to my family. I'm not going to eat that. That means I have some place where I can push you away. Right. Yeah, so sometimes that's the case. Sometimes for kids, they have actual real textural or, some food aversion kind of stuff. And they do need to do a little bit of an exposure type of therapy that would be guided by a behavioral therapist that is a specialist in this, and that would set up a plan, because just sort of your parents encouraging you to X, Y, and Z may not be enough if it's a pretty entrenched pattern. And at a younger age, parents and families need to be much more involved in the treatment. So you'd want a family therapist that specializes in eating concerns and food refusal to work with them on making weekly goals. We're going to, and have the kid be involved in it. We're going to add this to our repertoire or whatever. Another really impactful thing for kids is to have them be involved in the cooking of things. And when I say cooking of things, I mean literal cooking of things from scratch. I we've always had a vegetable garden and chickens and bees, and my kids were always involved in, but you don't have to have a big garden. You could have a basil plant on your counter, and you could have, ways in which, you take them to the market and you give them money and they can buy the fruits and vegetables there. And that gives them a little bit more control. It also gets them involved. And we do know that when kids are involved in cooking, they're more likely to eat what they cook, and they actually know where it came from. There's always concern about things like, what is a chicken nugget? Do you even know, like, what are the parts that are in the chicken nugget?
It's goo.
I don't even think it's chicken. I don't know. So, it's part of our I think our responsibility, beyond just having our kids, quote, eat healthy, but for all of us to know where food comes from, and I mean, at our dinner table, we read 5 contemplations for eating before we eat. And those 5 contemplations are, this food is a gift from the universe, it's a gift from the sky and the sun, and much loving hard work. And we think about the loving hard work, not just that happened in our household, but the loving hard work that happened in the strawberry fields that are down the road from us, where we drive by and see people hunched over picking strawberries. This is not easy work. And the loving hard work of the grocer, and the loving hard work of, us that, chop this whole salad together. I put strawberries in our salad. So that's, sweeten up a salad. That's another thing, is to have your kids start to play a role in it. But there's so much there. I mean, the field of eating disorders is a massive field under which we have many different forms of disordered eating. And my biggest recommendation would be to get someone that is experienced and expert in it. Don't just get a counselor. Get someone that specializes in eating in kids, someone that says things like they have a behavioral approach. ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is what I train therapists in, is a really powerful values-based approach, and family-based interventions if it's a younger child as well.
So thank you for that, because that's, I think, very helpful for anyone who is listening to it. But jumping on to something else I told you earlier I wanted to talk about, and is this concept of like the lost cohort, the teens that kind of have no direction, is kind of the term that's being used for teens that are now kind of going from where they're now potentially in college, or they've got out of high school and it was during the COVID time.
Yeah.
And they missed out on milestones, right? Like that identity building period, because they were forced to try and work from school. They missed out on a lot of the sports activities that they were extracurriculars that they were previously involved in because they couldn't be around their peers. How can parents, or how can even those who are in that teenage space or in their early 20s and are trying to they've got to question themselves, right? They go, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where to go. Can you give maybe a little guidance for them listening? Yeah.
Well, first, I just want to give some guidance to the parents of those kids, because it's so hard to have a kid that feels aimless. Mm-hmm. And what we do with our young adults is we want to force aim down their throats. We want them to get going. We get into this, like, I have this fear of you're going to be living in my garage when you're 35, right? And so what often parents do is the very thing that causes their kid to pull away and actually disclose less to their parents, because every time, the parent comes in the room, the ratio of correction to appreciation is like 99% to 1%. Right. So the first thing that these kids need is to be reminded of their strengths. They need to be reminded of the essence of them that you see in them. It's like watering a plant that's really, really wilty. The essence in them that you see in them that is going to be their resource. And this is why I do this whole work around the Wise Effort book around what is your genius. And I start with that before I go in for the jugular and say, you need to change a lot of things up. I start with what is your genius, because we all need to be reminded of our strengths. And I would say, parents, you missed milestones too. When you were a kid. And did you figure it out when you were 40 or 38 or 45? Maybe you missed a milestone around how to date, or you missed a milestone around, your mom did your laundry until you were 25 or whatever. Like, we all miss milestones. I missed milestones. I didn't know how to make friends until I was 35 because I was in and out of, hospitals and treatment for my whole teenage years. And I'm okay. It just some of these things we have to they take a little bit longer to get. So there's this great book by Alice Gopnik, who's from UC Berkeley, called The Gardener and the Carpenter. And she says, we can be carpenters with our children. We're trying to chisel them away and turn them into things and get them on the path. Or we can be gardeners, where we create the richest soil for whatever seed they are to sprout and grow. And some seeds take a while to sprout. And for these kids that had this experience of COVID and, really like a true trauma, I mean, we're going to see this down the line, sort of the trauma of COVID, but also the trauma of disconnection and increased technology use that's happening, is that we need to help them find their tribe. We need to help them find connection. We need to help them remember their strengths. We need to create a variety of interests and opportunities for them to engage in. And we need to pull our foot off of the gas of this expectation that they're supposed to be somewhere on some timeline. Because you're just doing the same thing to them that you're doing to you, and how happy are you? You hit all the milestones, you run all the gyms, but where's your life satisfaction? Where's your vitality? Where's your sense of community? Where's your sense of fun? Where's your sense of understanding of what your values are and feeling in alignment? So I would front load those with a tremendous amount of love, and also some expectations and boundaries. Don't leave the milk on the counter, have them participate in contributing if they're home, to the household, because there's a fine line, there in terms of, I see it with my own kid where he's taller than me, but I'm still doing more things than he is, so he can be involved. And we do things where we'll get a huge thing of Post-it notes, and we'll put out around just for our household to run, these are the things that need to happen. The dishwasher needs to get emptied. The chickens need to get fed. The compost needs to go out. These just things. The carpet needs to get cleaned. The laundry needs to get put away. We put all the Post-it notes out. And then we say, okay, kids, one at a time, you each get to choose which ones do you want to do. And then we go through them. And those are their responsibilities.
So we have chores around our house as well. And my son the other day said to me, I don't get paid for that.
No.
And okay. I didn't have a real good answer for him. I was just like, I don't get paid for the things that I do around the house either.
Yeah.
That was my only answer. But how do you deal with that? I mean,
how I deal with that? I deal with that by saying we're a community.
Yeah.
When you have a community of roommates, I mean, our job is to produce self-driven child that function in the world and give back to our society. Whatever it is they have to offer, So when you have roommates or when you have a partner, and if your partner looked at you and said, I don't get paid for that, how would you feel? You'd be like, I do this because it's part of our community to have a thriving community. And when I do it, I go to we're kind of totally weirdos, but we take our kids to a Buddhist monastery every year. And there's in the monastery, there's jobs, there's working meditation. Like and what they teach us in the working meditation is to identify and think about, as you're doing the work, who and why am I doing this work? I've been on working meditations where I'm the toilet cleaning committee. Like I go in and clean the toilets for 300 people. And the what I think about when I'm doing that is I'm creating a bathroom that is for all these kids to come into at night and brush their teeth in, and it's going to be clean and they're going to feel good in here brushing their teeth. I don't get paid for it. But, if we think about that, I'm emptying the dishwasher for my family so that later on today, when I want a glass, it's in the cupboard and it feels good. And when I want to put my dirty glass somewhere, it's empty and I can put my dirty glass in. Doesn't that feel good? Intrinsic motivation. So we are an extrinsic motivated culture. We want to get paid for things. We want to lose weight. We want to blah, 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 blah. But extrinsic motivation, you can't hang your hat on because sometimes you're not going to get paid. Sometimes you're not going to lose weight. But if it's intrinsically motivated, if it's from your heart, from your values, from a deeper why, then you'll stick with it even when you don't want to do it. And even when no one notices and no one says good job or good boy or good girl, because we don't always get that. Especially this generation needs to learn that.
Yeah, I think it's intrinsic. I think the intrinsic component is lost quite a bit with the current generation, because they have so many other things going on, and they are being pulled in many directions with digital tools, and it's driving them away. I think it's really unfortunate for that situation.
Yeah.
But I know that we're out of time here. I want to give you what time you have left back. For everyone listening, you can find Dr. Hill online, and I will put everything about her in the show notes. She has, a few different books out there. You can read those, and she does run retreats and a lot of other things that you can get involved with. Dr. Hill, what a pleasure today to have you on. You've answered a lot of my questions. I could keep going for the next couple hours, but thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It was delightful to talk with you. I loved how you just brought your whole person. And I imagine I can see you in the gym and with your staff and in your different settings. That's what you do. And I just love that when someone comes in as just their whole self. And if folks want to check out, I have a podcast too, which is Wise Effort. Yeah. You can learn more about me just at wiseeffort.com.
Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Okay.
Take care.